wider confidence level in Donald Trump than African Americans, and why it's almost 50% have confidence in Donald Trump. Welcome, everyone. Gabriel Buelna, BuelnaNews. It is our pleasure to speak with today's guest, Congressman Tony Cardenas. Congressman Cardenas is the representative for California's 29th Congressional District and was previously a member of Los Angeles City Council and the California State Assembly. Welcome, Congressman Cardenas. How are you doing?
My pleasure to be here. It's always good to see you.
All right. Are you in the district or in D.C.?
I'm in the San Fernando Valley. I'm in the district.
Okay. So, Congressman, you're even under quarantine, time is still tight. So, you're native of the San Fernando Valley. What motivated you to pursue a political career?
Well, I got tricked into doing it. I grew up here in the Northeast Valley, married my wife, Norma, raising our kids. I was running a little business. And then a Chicano activist, James Acevedo, said, "You need to run for office." And I laughed and I said, "People like me don't run for office." And what I meant was brown people like me don't run for office. We didn't have brown people at the legislative level, congressional level, at pretty much any level of government. So I just assumed it wasn't for us, for the people from the hood. And so it took him about 6 months to keep bugging me. And one day he knew how to get to me. Finally, he said, "You don't care about your community." And I said, "Don't say that. I own a business here. I'm raising my family here. I invest my time and energy. I love my community. If I didn't, I wouldn't have come back." I got my engineering degree from UC Santa Barbara, and I decided to settle back into Buelna. And so he said, "Well, if you do care, if you don't run, it's going to be another outsider claiming to live here in the Northeast Valley, and actually the people are going to elect them." And I had replaced the 16-year veteran of the State Assembly, Richard Katz, who did a fine job. And he was there for 16 years, but term limits had hit. So this Chicano activist finally got somebody to run, and that was me. And we won in 1996. And I immediately realized that my job wasn't to just be the first. It meant I couldn't be the last. So we helped Richard Alarcon get elected to the state Senate. And then we had two legislators. And then I helped Alex Padilla get elected to the city council. Richard Alarcon and I disagreed on that one. So I supported Alex and Richard supported somebody else. And then after that, we helped Nuri Martinez get elected to the school board, and Felipe Fuentes, and Raul Bocanegra, and Luz Rivas, and Monica Rodriguez, etc. So now there's a bunch of us. And all of us, by the way, went to San Fernando High School.
Oh, my goodness. That's and you had actually one professor in common, or I'm not sure if he was there, Alex Teresa, right?
Alex Teresa was not my teacher, but he was on campus. And I remember him because he would volunteer to be part of the clubs and stuff. You know, how you needed a teacher sponsor and stuff. So I knew him through that route. I didn't know him as a teacher.
So moving on to national politics. So in a national Latino decisions poll released on April 24th of 1,200 Latinos, 59% state they will vote for or are leaning towards Joe Biden, with 18% undecided. When asked if they would be more or less likely to support Democrat Joe Biden if he selects Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, the first Latina ever elected to the U.S. Senate, as his vice presidential running mate, 67% of respondents stated that they would. When asked, would you feel more or less enthusiastic and motivated to turn out and vote in November if Joe Biden selects a Latina, such as Cortez Masto, for vice presidential running mate, 72% of respondents stated that they would be more likely to turn out and vote for her or for Senator Biden. Question: should having a qualified popular Latina on the Biden ticket be a focus at this particular time?
I think it's a winning ticket. I think that when you look at that poll, I know it's a Somos poll, right? When you look at that poll and you look at other polls, you look at the history of Latino voting in this country. And right now, I think that Donald Trump has been engaged for 5.5 years now in the most aggressive voter suppression campaign in the history of the United States. And the people he's targeting the most are people who connect with immigrant households and people who are Latino. And so for us to get Latinos to get out to vote in the numbers that we can, and I hope and expect that we will, the Biden campaign is going to have to put their money where their mouth is. And if they had Catherine Cortez Masto, U.S. Senator, I just was talking to her a couple of days ago. And the first thing I told her is I said, "Catherine, Senator, I apologize. I've been using your name a lot when it comes to the Biden people and with the press and everybody else, because I think she's an amazing person. She's a great U.S. Senator. She was a statewide elected before she became a U.S. Senator. She is phenomenal. And I think that she would be a great pick. But to your question, will it get Latinos to vote? I believe it will. But that in and of itself, regardless of who Joe Biden picks as a running mate, they're going to have to put their money where their mouth is in the Latino community to get the Latinos excited about voting.
So why does it seem that a Latina VP is not being considered in terms of national polling on vice presidential candidates or even news articles? The Latina name is not coming out. Why is that?
Well, the thing is, Captain Cortez Masto and the other Latinas who should be at the top of the list, we have Lujan Grisham, the former congresswoman that I served with, and she's now the governor of New Mexico. You have Lucio Rogal Allard. You're talking about people, if you put them in the room and have them debate and take on policy, they are amazing. But at the same time, they don't get out there and they don't go around bragging about their name. They don't go around pushing their name. They don't have 5 million followers. But the bottom line is they're quality individuals. And when you get them in front of a situation or a debate or what have you, they can hold their own. But you're absolutely right. People don't know who they are because I think a lot of it has to do with our upbringing. We're taught not to be braggarts. We're talking about just do a good job. Just do the best you can and you'll be noticed and you'll be thanked, etc. So again, it's great to see that they have humility. But the problem is in politics in America, humility isn't a big plus when it comes to popularity. It's a big plus when it comes to getting the work done.
So let's get down to brass tacks here. In 2016, only 47.6% of eligible Latinos voted, compared to 65% of whites, 59% for African Americans, and 49.3% for Asian Americans. So if we're looking at the swing states of Arizona, Nevada, Colorado, Florida, North Carolina, where that gap, that delta of needing Latino outreach, how can Joe Biden get Latinos to be motivated if a Latina isn't chosen for vice president? Because that's right.
Well, first of all, Joe Biden's going to be able to contrast his lifelong public service record with the incredibly egregious record of the current president, Donald Trump. That in and of itself can give a tremendous contrast and get Latinos motivated because Latinos are suffering right now. When you look at the coronavirus, we're at the tip of the spear. We're suffering proportionally more than almost any other community. The only other community that's suffering more on a per capita basis are the Native American community. So the bottom line is, when you look at the contrast, what it's going to take is Joe Biden to actually put their money where their mouth is, the campaign to put their money where their mouth is, so they can actually draw that contrast. The contrast is crystal clear. But you're going to have a Trump campaign that's going to be spending upwards of $1 billion directly and another $1 billion or so indirectly with his support system. So the bottom line is the Biden campaign, all they need to do is draw that contrast and they'll draw Latinos out to vote for Joe Biden.
Got it. Thank you very much. So moving on to workers. So today, LULAC's president, Domingo Garcia, called for Meatless Monday to protest horrible conditions at meat packing plants where 30% of the workers are Latino, 20% African Americans. And the workers are all they're calling for is the line to be slowed, plexiglass, and safety issues. So what's your thought on what's happening in some of these smaller state Midwest, but where Latinos and African Americans seem to be quite ignored?
Well, I love Meatless Mondays. I've been doing it for years and for different environmental reasons. But I think this is a great opportunity for us to focus on the dependency that this country has on the immigrant worker. And it's really important for people to understand that this president wants to relax the liability of these business owners to try to force people to risk their lives just to put food on the table for everybody else. And I think it's a great idea what LULAC and Domingo is doing. I support it. And the fact of the matter is, it's important for people to understand that people need to be treated like human beings. We are the United States of America. We're not some third world country that doesn't have laws, that doesn't respect the human being. We do and are supposed to. But this administration is acting less than that. They actually want and don't care to put people's lives on the line because they think that there's a higher priority than human life, and there isn't. And the bottom line is what LULAC is doing and what they're saying. I support it, and I hope that everybody catches on and supports it too.
Did the string of Bernie victories and the fact that younger Latinos did not support enthusiastically Joe Biden change the perspective of national Latino leadership to be more in tune with some of the issues of constituents?
Well, the big difference between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders was simply this. Bernie Sanders' campaign, for the first time ever in the history of a presidential campaign, hired a culturally competent Latino and put him in the room where the decisions are being made. And his name is Chuck Rocha. I happen to know Chuck Rocha. I've known him for the last 8 years that I've been in Washington, going back and forth. And he's an amazing individual. He believes in Latino empowerment, and he got his shot. He got his shot to prove what you and I and everybody knows who's been involved in Latino politics or politics in general. If you just talk to Latino voters, if you get your message out to them, you'll get the response you're getting from white voters, which is a high propensity for them to vote for you. But let me tell you this, what Bernie did, let's just take Nevada. They cleaned Joe Biden and everybody else's clock. Because remember, in Nevada, there were many Democrats on the ballot. But Bernie Sanders single-handedly got, I think it was close to 70% of the Latino vote went to him. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. It's really simple. It's really simple. He put a plan together. He invested early. And one thing I got to tell everybody who runs campaigns, you don't have to spend extra money. You don't have to spend more money. All you have to do is spend money on a brown voter, just like you do for a white voter. All you need to do, if you're going to spend $100 to get those Anglo voters across the street to come out and vote, but across the street you have the Hernandez family, and you only spend $15 or $20, guess what? You get what you pay for. You didn't get their attention. You didn't get them excited. And maybe they're just not going to vote for you, or maybe they're not going to vote at all. But when you have a household on the other side of the street where one campaign's spending $100 on them, another campaign spending $100 on them, and you have a multiple candidacy campaign like you did in Nevada, if everybody's spending money on that household across the street of white voters, what happens is they have $200, $300, $400, $500 being spent to get their attention. Well, it's no surprise they're a high propensity voter because everybody's knocking on their door. But if you have that family across the street and nobody knocks, maybe one person knocks on their door, and then if you knock on it again, and that one person knocks on it 3, 4, 5 times, like other people knocked on the door across the street, you're going to get what Bernie Sanders got. You're going to get people's attention. They're going to listen, and they're going to say, you know what? I like you. And guess what? You're the only one talking to me anyway. So what the heck? I'm going to vote for you. I like you, but at the same time, why do I like somebody else that doesn't talk to me? No need to like them.
So in some of our conversations, we've heard from young voters that they're interested in, or that young voters are interested in handouts as a result of the primaries. Are young voters looking for handouts, or are they just looking for what previous generations got in the GI Bill and some of the support that previous generations got?
I don't think young voters are looking for handouts. I think that young voters get their information very differently. I think that young voters have a different paradigm of what they look at as work. A lot of people see this pandemic has caused a lot of people to know what it's like to work from home. But there's more and more people who are working from home, more and more people who are working through apps and programs, et cetera, working through their computer where they don't have to show up to work. So I think that it's just a different paradigm. Do they want things for free? No, I don't think so. I think that young people in America are just as proud as any other, especially Latino young people.
So let's move on to small business. So as a medium-sized business owner, you ran a real estate business, like you mentioned, engineer. So according to a recent survey in late March by the Stanford Latino Entrepreneur Initiative, 86% of Latino small business owners reported significant negative impact on their business by the pandemic. Nearly 2/3 say they will not be able to continue operating beyond 6 months if current conditions continue. So as a former real estate business owner, does the Latino business community need special assistance? And what type of assistance would that be?
Well, first of all, I've been getting a lot of calls in my office, and I've been talking to my colleagues from around the country. And what you just said rings true. And I've actually expanded the hours where people can call my office up until 8 o'clock at night. We're actually putting these businesses in touch with the not-for-profit organizations that are spread out throughout the county that actually help women business owners, minority business owners, et cetera. But the thing first and foremost that people learn when you're a small minority business, if you try for an SBA loan during normal circumstances, there's probably a 90+% chance you're not going to get it. And if you try again, it doesn't get any better. So the main thing that we need to remind small business owners right now is the application process is very straightforward and simple. We made it simple on purpose so we can give the most access to the smallest businesses as possible. Now, the truth of the matter is the Treasury Department has got it upside down, as usual, in this Trump administration, But at the same time, the SBA, the local SBA leaders are actually working really hard in LA County. I can't vouch for them all over the country, but in LA County, they're doing a much more fair job of making sure that the small businesses are attended to, that they're keeping the banks in check, and people like myself and my staff are keeping people in check as well by reminding them, did you in fact get that application from that small business? Now, I want to make something very clear. My office cannot tell a bank to actually grant a loan or the SBA to grant a loan. But what we can do is look over their shoulder and let them know that somebody's watching, so they better play it straight. So that's why my office has been open up until 8 o'clock, taking calls and making sure that we can help those small businesses understand and believe that they have a right and a responsibility to apply for that money. We put over $2.5 trillion to branch across America to help people with their health care and to help businesses stay alive so they can keep paying their employees and they can get back on their feet when this pandemic lifts. So the bottom line is there's a lot of work to be done, and I don't blame Latino small businesses to feel like they're going to be left out. But I challenge every small business owner in America, especially Latino businesses, forget about what happened 6 months ago when you applied for an application for an SBA loan, or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Please, please, please try it again.
So do we need a more engaged conversation between Latino labor and business? Because both can't survive without each other. In fact, 49% of Latino businesses have already implemented some staffing reductions, layoff, or hour reductions. So should we not bring together, again, labor and business to have discussions beyond this pandemic on how everyone is going to survive?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that when it comes to labor is always willing to be at the table, whether it's a Republican president or a Democrat president. But the bottom line is we have an egregious president right now who doesn't respect people who work for a living and certainly doesn't respect labor. I think if this administration had an opportunity, they would dismantle labor unions in America. And the bottom line is it's a difficult environment for labor unions to actually work with this administration. But thank God that the House of Representatives is represented by a majority of Democrats, and we're fighting to make sure that those kinds of, right to work states don't expand. And if Republicans had it their way, they'd make the country a right to work country, which simply means the opposite of what it sounds. It means that you don't have labor rights. You don't have rights as a worker. So we're defending them and working with them as much as we can. This administration doesn't want to hear it, though.
So moving on to higher education, while Latino educational attainment has increased over the years, Latinos are still far behind whites and other groups. Do you think the coronavirus pandemic will change the perspective of Latinos on how vulnerable we are and that all generations need to increase their educational attainment?
Well, education in the old days when I was growing up, it was kind of one of two things. You either learned a trade or you went to college. Now there's a lot more opportunities. People actually can learn how to code. You don't have to go to college. You can go and do that and receive a certificate and then improve your skills while you're already making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. Right now in America, for example, that's a field that has a shortage of coders, and they would like more and more American-born coders as well. And so the bottom line is, I think that higher education is always good. You never stop learning. And the bottom line is the opportunity for people in America to actually continue getting their education and to be able to do it in a way where they can find a career and feed a family and get on their feet financially. There's many venues and avenues, and I encourage any young person, when you graduate from high school, that's a milestone. But go on, get another certificate, get some kind of degree, whether it's in the healthcare space or if you're going to become some kind of coder or in the science space or become a teacher, etc. Continue getting your education, and it can be fun.
So the Center for the Study of Los Angeles came out with a recent poll showing that Latinos overall their stress level with regard to meeting their basic needs and being able to make ends meet is highest of all ethnic groups. So this goes back to the pandemic is showing some of the weaknesses in the job market, educational attainment. Does this call for a wider conversation during the pandemic and after about the role of education, and maybe calling for a reboot on the messages about educational attainment for Latinos? and what we
Yes.
expect as leaders?
Yes, the pandemic actually exposed how thin some communities have support systems and the kind of things that now are shown to be exacerbated. When it comes to education levels, when it comes to job attainment, when it comes to unemployment, Latinos have always been higher than the average of the rest of America. So the bottom line is what this pandemic has done is actually done exactly that. It's exposed, overexposed those kinds of things. So when this pandemic lifts, and it will, the bottom line is we need to get back to fighting to make sure that every community is represented and that the nuances and the differences between communities, cultural differences, et cetera, are taken into account when you're trying to encourage people to participate fully in the American system.
So in the United States, there's 36 million Americans of Mexican descent, either immigrant or connected in some way. Mexico has a population of 130 million, and we're right next to each other, literally. So the U.S. has made the European Union, Russia, and Asia central to U.S. support and aid without strings attached. What should a positive, forward-looking policy for Mexico and Latin America be for a future Biden administration, or you as a leader in Congress?
Well, ever since I got to Congress, I made sure that I started a committee with my colleagues, a caucus, I should say, with my colleagues to focus on the Americas. And also you have Congresswoman Norma Torres, who represents the Pomona area. She actually started a caucus when it comes to Central America specifically. And one thing that I've been stressing to my colleagues and to the previous president and to this administration is we need to focus on the sustainability and well-being of our neighbors. And that's good for them in the Americas, and it's good for the United States of America. And so the bottom line is what we need to do is we need to focus on the economic development of our neighbors and not just pour money into providing arms and things of that nature so that they can actually be more punitive with their constituencies throughout these countries. We need to actually focus on the economy, and the rest will take care of itself.
So you and I have talked about this before. There are currently 500,000 U.S.-born American children in Mexico, Mexican-American immigrants in Mexico. While they're scattered throughout Mexico, they're largely concentrated in the Tijuana and Ciudad Juarez area. Should the U.S. government fund programs for American children living abroad utilizing distance learning techniques and technologies, since they are American children, most of them they're in Mexico because one parent or both are undocumented, but they are U.S. born and will ultimately end up back. It can't be funded by the states, but should a Mexican-American foreign policy focusing on helping them be developed?
Absolutely. Simply put, that you put it very well and very accurately. That's real. It's going on right now. And we should engage at the federal level and at any other level to engage the local school districts, et cetera, to be our partners in that, to make sure that every American-born citizen, if they want an education, they have a right to an education. It doesn't matter what side of the border they're on.
So I think it would be accurate to say that the Cuban American population in the United States has had an effect on American foreign policy towards Cuba. Should Mexican American congresspeople such as yourself really take ownership of the United States policy towards Mexico to really guide it in a way that really improves everyone's boats at the same time?
Absolutely. The Hispanic Caucus is taking the lead, and our job is to educate our colleagues and bring them along and to get them to understand how important it is that the better Mexico is and the better the Americas are, then the better the United States will be, both when it comes to economics, when it comes to safety, and all those matters. So, yes, we are taking the lead, and we're going to continue to do that.
So with regard to Mexico's strategy with coronavirus, do you have any opinion on how Mexico is dealing with it, and how will Mexico's approach towards coronavirus affect this year?
Well, all I know about the way Mexico's handling it is what I read in the papers, but I also talk to some folks who go back, who have gone, they're not going lately, have gone back and forth to Mexico, and they're telling me that unfortunately the current president of Mexico hasn't been approaching it very well, and has been a little bit like Trump when it comes to giving mixed messages about how serious their population needs to take it.
So when I talk to Mexican politicians, they say something interesting. They say when U.S. congressmen, especially Mexican Americans, address the issue of Mexican politics, and they do it in English because a lot of these conversations occur in Spanish. Nothing wrong with that. But they say when Mexican American politicians, and especially they mention you by name, really offer suggestions or critique of Mexican politics, Mexico City listens. Have you seen that? What's your engagement with Mexico City and politics in Mexico?
Well, ever since I got elected to the State Assembly in 1996, I've taken several trips and met with various presidents of Mexico over the last 24 years. And yes, they do listen to us, but at the same time, we need a federal administration here to listen to Mexico as well. It is a give and take. And for example, this president goes around the world trying to say, look, I have a big stick. You either do what I say, or I'm going to pull the rug out from under you, or I'm going to punish you, or what have you. So the bottom line is it takes a listening on both sides of the borders when it comes to these international talks. But yes, Mexico is already a great trading partner with the United States and critical to the United States economy. And so we need to actually have that dialogue. They do listen to us. We need to do a better job of listening to them.
So moving on to, you're on the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, correct?
Correct, yeah.
We've basically agreed that electrification, clean water, roads are essential. So should access to broadband, to low cost, high quality broadband be a priority with regard to the Hispanic Caucus?
Yes, absolutely, and it is. Matter of fact, I was on a call today with Speaker Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats. I had an earlier meeting in the Energy and Commerce Committee, bipartisan with both Republicans and Democrats. In the Energy and Commerce Committee meeting today, we talked about healthcare specifically. We didn't talk about broadband specifically, although it was mentioned because healthcare with telehealth, it's part of that as well. But when I was talking with Pelosi, she was giving an update about the next bill that is going to come out of the House of Representatives that will have broadband as one of the features when it comes to making sure that we provide broadband to the smallest communities across America and the most starved community when it comes to the ability to have telehealth and to have broadband for education purposes, et cetera. So that's the objective of the Democratic Caucus. That's the objective of the Democrats in the House of Representatives.
Final question. So with regard to, you're a big advocate of community colleges, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So what role do you think the community colleges will play during and after the pandemic? And the final question would be, where do you see community colleges playing a role with building housing for a lot of our students in community colleges?
Yes, as you well know, Gabriel, and you've been doing a good job enlightening people to how important this is, but there are way too many people who are enrolled in college who are young. They're 18, 19, 20 years old, and they're living out of their car. Basically, they're homeless. And there's no reason why our community colleges can't provide housing just like our UCs and Cal States do. And it's important for people to understand that if people can actually get their life together and have a roof over their head, they will excel. They will be part of the economy and a positive part of the economy. So to me, it's an investment that needs to take place. And it's just, unfortunately, I think right now, community colleges haven't been included. It's just because we just haven't thought as a country to do that. But hopefully here in Los Angeles, you, Gabriel, and others are going to have an opportunity to actually make it happen and set the example for the rest of the country. We literally can have millions of 18, 19, and 20-year-olds to have housing, get their higher education started, and move on into the workforce instead of falling behind and not being able to finish their education.
Congressman Cardenas, is there anything else that you would like to say?
Well, I just want to say thank you for your questions. Your first question started more off on the political level. I thought maybe, he didn't forget. I'm very proud to be the chair of the Boyle PAC, which is the Hispanic Caucus PAC in Washington. I got to Washington in 2013 in January, and my colleagues elected me at the end of 2014 to be the chair. So over the last 6 years, we've gone from 24 members of the Hispanic Caucus up to 38 members. When we started that effort, since I became the chair, we had one United States Senator, Democrat. Now we have two. And at the end of this year, Ben Ray Lujan will be moving from Congress to the United States Senate. So we'll have three. And we're going to keep going. My goal is to see us get to 50 or more Democrat Hispanics in Washington. And we've been doing a really great job. I want to thank all of you out there across America who've been donating to the Hispanic Caucus Bold Pack. In the last 5 years, we've raised over $23 million to help elect Latinos and Latinas. And I'm very proud to say that we've gone beyond that, and we support Black candidates, LGBTQ candidates, et cetera, to come to Congress. And we have an incredibly successful record of supporting some amazing candidates. And we were a big part. The Hispanic Caucus was a big part of the House of Representatives taking back the majority in the House in the last election cycle. And we're going to do it again this time.
Congressman Cardenas, thank you very much. Everyone, thank you for listening to the Buelna News channel. Have a good rest of the day and be safe, everyone, as we're quarantined and take care of each other. Thank you very much.
Take care. Thanks for having me.
So if you have any comments, questions, or you just want to say something, you can email us at BuelnaNews@gmail.com. You could post a comment on our YouTube channel. You can post a comment on Facebook. So let us know if you have any guests or if you simply have something to say. We'll read it on our next episode of Buelna News at the Buelna News channel.